The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical psychology for today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, narrated by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. On this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from A Veiled Gazelle by Idries Shah. Alim the Artful. From Badakhshan to Sarandib, from Marrakesh to Zanzibar, among the Bedouin and the Kochi, wherever the palm tree has been carried, and wherever it will not take root, you will hear of the fame of Alim the Artful. While there is still a sultan's palace upon this earth, the tales of Alim the Artful will be told and retold. Because to tell a tale of Alim is to bring the shadow of the celestial Humai bird, with honour and good health, upon the teller. And when there is no palace of a sultan, fortune and success will descend upon the hearers as well as the tellers of the tales of Alim, Alim the Artful, blessings upon his memory. How Alim bought an orchard. Now Alim was born in Pagman, the smiling land of the Afghans, where the fruit is so delicious that people have been advised not to eat it in case, travelling elsewhere, they might feel the unworthy sentiments of despair and dislike by contrast. Alim was in Pagman when he heard that there was an orchard for sale. The man who told him this said, "Alim, you are so cunning that it is said that you can make a demon believe that it is a fairy. You always help people. Will you go to the owner of the orchard and use your golden tongue to get it for me at a very low price?" And he pressed a sum of money into Alim's hand to pay for the orchard. Now this man was a greedy and unworthy individual, whom Alim decided was not fit to have the orchard. He went, nevertheless, to see the owner, and spent some time with him. Presently he came past the house of the greedy man, who said, "Alim, how did the matter fare?" Alim said, "The deal is done." And the other man jumped for joy. Alim continued, "I talked and talked and talked. The man at first wanted a high price, then I got it down. Then I got it down again and again. Then I made him reduce the price by a number of criticisms. Then I suggested that I might want it for the Khan, who, as you know, is a Syed, and so he reduced it again. And then I told him that I understood that there might be a new tax on orchards, and he went on in this vein for some time, while the greedy man became more and more excited, and, unable to contain himself, shouted, 'How much did you get it for?' 'Less than 1/10 of the price which you were offering, which was itself niggardly enough,' said Alim. 'My dear, dear friend, how can I ever thank you?' said the greedy man. 'I must reward you with something like 0.5% of the amount.' 'You have already rewarded me enough,' said Alim. 'And how is that?' 'Well, it was the memory of your frugality which kept me going through all that bargaining.' 'If you say so, I shall certainly not press you,' said the greedy man. 'In fact,' said Alim, 'I was so obsessed by your need to save money that I saved all your money in case you had second thoughts.' 'What do you mean, saved all my money?' 'Quite simple. When the price had gone down almost to nothing for that very valuable orchard, I thought, my friend has now saved so much on this deal that it would only be poetic for him to save it all. And so I bought the orchard for myself. Here is your money back.' How Alim became a thief. Alim the Artful travelled to Samarkand to find that matters were such that all the honest men were in jail and all the thieves had become rich, famous, and respected. Because of the corruptness of the Khan and the example of the court, the scholars were thieves, the merchants were thieves, the soldiers were thieves, and the officials were thieves. Of course, because of their dishonesty, they called themselves the elect. Alim said to himself, "If all the honest men are in jail, then I will become a thief. A thief who knows that he is one must surely be better than one who does not. Furthermore, has it not been said that in a rose garden be a rose, in a thicket be a thorn?" A thief, Alim thought, should start somewhere. Since I have the option, I should become thief to the Grand Khan. He went to the palace by dead of night and found the treasury. But there was nothing in it. The Khan knew his own people so well that he had hidden his wealth in a safe place. Search as he might, Alim the Artful could not find anything of value. So he returned to his caravanserai and kept his ears open. The merchants who regularly used the serai talked among themselves of the collection of emeralds which the Khan was amassing. "Nobody knows where he keeps them," said the merchants to one another, "but he must keep them somewhere, and since nobody can be trusted here, they must be somewhere near him." "Quite right," said Alim to himself. Although he was artful, his maxim was, "Artfulness is not only used, it is learnt." So a few nights later, he was in the palace again, this time by the Grand Khan's bedside. Alim sat down on a stool near the Khan's head and started to stroke his forehead. Then he said, "Can you hear me, Great Khan?" After a few repetitions, the Khan started to answer him. The Khan said, "What is it?" Alim said, "Where do you keep the collection of emeralds?" "Now, fellow," said the Khan, still in his sleep, "do you really expect me to tell that to a rude fellow whom I meet in the street, even if he is cooling my brow for me with a fan?" Assuming another voice, Alim said, "Away, ruffian! Can't you see that the Khan wants to talk to me about his emeralds?" But the Grand Khan was not to be drawn, and refused to say anything to Alim after that. The next night Alim tried again. Sitting beside the Khan, he said, "Your emeralds have been stolen." "Don't talk nonsense," said the Khan. But since Alim did not say any more, the thought rolled backwards and forwards in his mind in his sleep. While Alim sat there silently, the Khan called out to the Khanum in the adjoining room, "Malika, have you the emeralds safe?" The Khanum answered, "Yes, of course. They are under my bed, as they have always been." So the Khan, muttering, "Stupid oaf," slipped into a relieved and profound slumber once more. Alim the Artful waited until the Khanum's breathing showed that she was deeply asleep, and then he slipped into her room and took the emeralds. That night he gave them to an honest man whom he had met in the serai, who had escaped from prison. This man slipped from the city before it was searched by the furious Khan's men, who practically demolished every house looking for the treasure. The criers shouted the royal proclamation in the street that theft always leads to disgrace and destruction, and the emeralds must be returned forthwith. Since the people were muttering against the Khan and all his works, nobody noticed anything unusual about Alim's saying whenever he heard the criers, "Since theft has become the order of the day here, how can it be dishonorable?" Now the Khan called the wisest man in all the land to advise him how to catch the thief, even if he could not get his emeralds back. "We must make an example of him, otherwise he will become more and more audacious," said the Khan. He added, "You wisest men in all the land will, I am sure, provide a perfect trap. But just to hasten matters, I will have to put you in a dungeon until you work one out." How Alim proved that he was a doctor. The soldiers of the Khan, while this was going on, were searching the city for strangers, because the people had been intimidated for so long that it was the Khan's belief that the thief must be a foreigner of some kind. It was thus that they came upon Alim the Artful in his caravanserai, and unsatisfied by his claim that he was a doctor, carried him before the Grand Khan. "Are you a doctor?" asked the Khan. Indeed I am, a special kind of doctor, said Alim.
Then you must cure someone at once, or we'll put you to the torture to see whether you are the thief, said the Khan.
Like all doctors, I have my rules, said Alim, for he had hit upon a plan.
Abide by your rules, so long as you do not decline to treat a patient, said the Khan.
My rule is that I should be allowed to select the patient.
You may certainly do so, providing that there is quite obviously something wrong with him, said the Khan.
Nothing easier, said Alim. Do you see that blind man over there? I elect to cure him.
That would indeed prove that you were a very special kind of doctor, said the Khan, for he is my son-in-law and has been blind in both eyes for 20 years.
Get ready for the cure, said Alim, advancing towards the patient.
Your Highness, murmured the Grand Vizier in alarm into the Khan's ear, don't forget that your daughter is so ugly that you had to find a blind man to marry her. Now, if his sight should be restored—
Enough, shouted the Khan. Throw this man Alim out. He is no longer under suspicion.
How Alim made his first disciple. Now Alim the Artful thought that he would lie low for a while, just in case the Khan had second thoughts about him, so he returned to his native glens. In Kabul he was munching dried white mulberries and nuts, having spent his last penny, when he thought he would try to collect some capital. He saw a man coming past the chaikhana where he was sitting, and called out to him, "Friend, give me some money."
"I haven't got any,"
said the man. "Well, give me something, a gift, or even a piece of advice."
"I haven't either."
"What is your name?" asked Alim.
"I am called Chogh the Thin," said the man.
"Chogh the Thin, you haven't much to lose. Would you like to become a disciple?"
"What is your path?"
"The Artful path. I am none other than Alim the Artful."
"Well," said Chogh the Thin, "I hadn't heard of your tariqah before, but it may be a secret and therefore a powerful one. I'll join you."
So Chogh and Alim teamed up. How Alim taught Chogh storytelling. Chogh, who had a healthy appetite, said to Alim, "Master, I am your disciple now, and here we are in this tea-house without the means to buy a cup of tea. I know that the pupil should help to feed the master, and I am ready to earn something. But what does one do when the disciple is hungry?" "That is no problem," said Alim, "because when the disciple is hungry, the master finds a way to feed him. It is not for the disciple to propose that he should earn something when he is manifestly incapable of doing so. It is almost impiety, and near to hypocrisy." And Alim addressed the other people in the tea-house, saying in the first words that came into his head, "Brothers, I could do with some chicken soup. I feel as much like it as a fox. Would you care to buy me some if I tell you how a sage changed the habits of a fox?" Some of the people agreed, and Alim began. The Story of the Fox and the Chickens. Roba the fox used to raid the hen-houses of a certain village every night. He was so sly and so efficient that the villagers could never catch him. Soon he was supplying all the other foxes for miles around with chickens, for he found that he could not stop catching chickens. At last the villagers decided to call in the local sage to help. They said, "Great sage, catch Roba the fox for us and stop him killing our chickens." The sage agreed. Using a special talisman which he had, he made the fox come to him. When the villagers saw that he had the fox, they cried, "Kill him, so that we shall not be worried any more by foxes." But the sage said, "I did not agree to kill the fox, only to stop him catching chickens." As they watched, the sage took off the dervish stone pendant emblem of his initiation and hung it by a thong around the fox's neck. Then he let it go. The villagers said, "How can such a thing prevent chickens from being caught by a fox?" The sage replied, "Not only men, but all of creation flee and conceal themselves from the truth. When the chickens, like mankind, glimpse this stone, they will hide themselves so well that even a fox will not be able to find them." And so it was. The fox, unable to catch any chickens after that, came to live with the sage, who shared his food with it, and used to call the fox Roba, my fellow dervish. With the money which they collected from the telling of this tale, Chog and Alim were able to while away a few days in the Afghan capital, as well as eating their fill of chicken pilau. "Come," said Alim to Chog, "it is time we started on our travels again, for Kabul is hot and dusty. Has it not been said that artfulness is movement, an artful man settled down becomes a deceitful man?" As they walked along the highway towards Jalalabad, they saw a strange-looking man coming towards them. "Let us stop him," said Alim, "and see what cunning we can exercise upon this apparition." When they were within a few paces of the stranger, Alim said, "May you never be tired, brother. What is your origin and what your destination, and what news do you bring?" The man heaved a great sigh and said in a halting manner, "May you be safe. I come from a country a year's walk to the west, and I have come to sit at the feet of the wise, for I have heard that the lands of the Persians and the Afghans are where the real wisdom of ancient times is still to be found." "Welcome, welcome, and welcome," said Alim. "There is indeed ancient wisdom here, but unfortunately most of those who seek it look only at the obvious. Would you like me to show you some?" The stranger, whose name was Yunus, accepted gratefully, and the three betook themselves to a caravanserai to discuss matters. Yunus explained that he was looking for a teacher who would tell him and show him wonders and evidences of the secret wisdom of the ancients. "It might cost you a great deal in money and otherwise," said Alim. "I am prepared for any cost," said Yunus, "for I am a rich man and have only adopted the dervish robe in order to appear more acceptable on the road." Yunus had heard of a great sage who had talking animals and could make inanimate objects obey his will. "Such things are plentiful, but they are in concealment," said Alim, "and you are lucky to have met us, for we will be able to shed some light upon the matter for you." The next morning Alim roused Chog before dawn and said to him, "Yunus is still asleep. Late last night I bought these twin goats from a merchant at this serai. You, as my disciple, must obey me in every particular, so make note of what I am saying. March ahead towards Jalalabad with one of these goats. At midday, halt and make tea. When we catch up with you, answer everything that I say with yes, unless I say, 'How did you know?' in which case you will answer, 'The goat told me.'" Chog repeated his instructions to make sure that he understood them. "And," added Alim, "take this piece of stick and keep it in your pocket. Give it to me when I ask you about the meal." Later in the morning, Alim woke Yunus and said, "We must be off, for I have affairs to attend to in Jalalabad." Alim unhitched the goat's lead from a post, said something into its ear, and gave it a smack. The goat careered off down the road. "What did you do?" asked Yunus. "I was sending a message," said Alim. As they walked down the road, Alim took the twin brother of the stick, which he had given Chog, and threw it into the air, saying, "Stick, do your work." Towards midday, they came upon Chog making a pot of tea by the roadside. Near him was tethered the twin goat. Alim said, "Did the goat bring you my message about saying your prayers in a certain form?" "Yes," said Chog. How did you know to make tea at this precise moment?
The goat told me, said Chog.
Yunus the traveller was transported with delight. A miracle! To think that I have blundered into companionship with people of the ancient wisdom, he cried. Alim looked at him. Are you satisfied with the evidence which you have received? He asked. Yes, more than satisfied, said Yunus, and I beg you to accept me as a disciple, so that I may learn the wisdom. You may ask me one question on the basis of which I will decide your suitability for spiritual studies, said Alim the artful. Well, there is the matter of the stick. When we were on the road, you said that you were sending a message, and you threw it into the air. What was that? I was sending a message to Chog about the feeding arrangements, said Alim. But how? By an inanimate object. Don't you remember that the wise have talking animals and can make inanimate objects obey their will? Show him the message stick, Chog. Chog took the duplicate stick from his belt. Yunus almost swooned with delight. Will you accept me? There is nothing that I want more in all the world, he said. I am afraid that you have failed my test, said Alim, but I can do more than accept you as a disciple. I can explain to you that you do not seek wisdom if you are attracted by trickery. The people whose reputations you are so impressed with are doing things which are incomprehensible to you, and so you think that they are miracles. Some, like us, are even charlatans. I studied for years under a Sufi master, and the first thing he taught me is what we are teaching you. Have no preconceptions and be humble. It is your arrogance which makes you think that you have found a master. And that was how Yunus learnt when Alim explained the tricks, how to seek. He gave the two a handsome present and set off on his travels again. How Alim met Moor the Slight. When Alim and Chog reached Jalalabad, they went to a caravanserai to hear the latest news and to refresh themselves. All the merchants there were agog because a spy had reported from Kabul that sacks of gold were being sent to their town for safekeeping, since there had been so much thievery in the capital city. Ha, said Alim, it is just as well that we set out in advance. Otherwise they would be searching the city for strangers, in case thieves come after the gold. There had not been a theft in Jalalabad for decades, as the Khan there was peculiarly harsh with thieves of all kinds. Nobody dares to steal anything here, said Chog, when he returned from a gossip-collecting expedition in the bazaars, because the Khan is so very fierce. What is the Khan like? Asked Alim. The Khans here are usually good, but this one is terrible, said Chog. Very well, said Alim. We shall teach him a lesson. That very night Chog and Alim lingered near the citadel, waiting for the consignment of gold. Sure enough, it arrived in heavy bags on bullock carts. In order to show the soldiers from Kabul escorting the consignment that Jalalabad was safe and honest, there was just one man with a cudgel waiting to receive it. The Kabuli troops withdrew after getting a receipt, and Alim and Chog walked up to the man with the cudgel. May you never be tired, said Alim. May your shadow never grow less, replied the man. What is your name? Asked Alim. They call me Moor the Slight, said the man, who was a towering giant with much muscle and little brain. But sometimes I am called Three Brains, because the walnut is called Four Brains in our language. Do you know who I am? Asked Alim. No, Aga, said Moor. That's very fortunate. I must see that everyone is rewarded for keeping the secret so well, said Alim. What secret? Asked Moor, scratching his head in puzzlement. That I am from the highest authority, said Alim. Not the captain of the guard? Asked Moor. who had hardly heard of anyone more important. "There is someone more significant even than the captain of the guard," said Alim, "and I am his immediate representative. The captain of the guard, compared with me, is like a mouse compared with the elephant." Moore was most impressed. Anyone who could speak like that about the captain of the guard must be a man of consequence. "Well, as the saying has it, first the food and then the speech," said Alim, "and so you'd better go and get the bullock carts, and tell the people who have them that it is very important that they be here soon, and if they are, we might consider hiring more of them for secret affairs like this."
"Shall I go to the Carnley stables?" asked Moore.
"No, you fool. This is a secret matter. Thieves might have their spies there. Go and get bullocks from someone who has never supplied them to the Khan before." So, in not much more time than it takes to tell, Moore went to a bullock cart hiring stables and brought back 2 carts. Moore had given him, as a deposit, all the remaining money from Eunice's gift. It was so much that the owner of the carts hoped that they would never be returned, so that he could take the huge deposit instead. At that moment a soldier of the Khan came up and asked why the 3 were so busy loading bags of gold onto a bullock cart. "Knock him out with your cudgel," said Alim to Moore.
"Why?" asked Moore, "for surely he is on our side."
"You yokels are all the same," said Alim. "Do as I say and I will tell you afterwards." Moore knocked the soldier senseless, and Alim the Artful trussed him up, while the others got the rest of the gold into the carts. When all was ready, they started to move out of town. Alim said, "I told you that I would explain why you had to knock out the soldier, and I will, for I am a man of my word. Didn't you notice that he spoke with a slight accent? That was the Pugman way of talking. Now, in our valleys we are so tough that we have a special form of endearment which is reserved only for our fellow Pugmanis. This is to knock each other out in friendliness, just as you more effete people clap a friend on the shoulder. I asked you to do it because I was busy loading the gold. It is what we call the Pugman Salam."
"You must be men indeed, you men of the mountains," said Moore, "and it must be for this reason that they have the saying, 'Curse the strongest man in the world, but do not say as much as good morning to a Pagmani.'"
Presently they reached a field where they buried the gold. They found a Kochi nomad encampment where Alim was received like a lost brother. Alim said, "Brothers, tonight we feast," and he presented the bullocks to the Kochis, who tore them into strips in what seemed like a few seconds, and roasted the pieces over a fire. The Kochis told everyone's fortunes, and then Alim said, "Friends, if anyone comes looking for bullocks, I am sure that none of us will have heard of any." This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation and is copyright 2019. All rights reserved.